cuts down and prevents the spread of whatever you have to other.
Morning, Councilmember Friedson. How are you? All right. Well, thank you, Vivian. Are you there? You can. Good morning, Vivian. If you'd like to turn on your camera, you're invited to do that. It's up to you.
I don't think the video is working, but I can certainly talk. So we have.
Sorry, is there a problem with the video, or is it just your own? Okay.
Okay, there we go.
There you go.
They had taken us all out. So.
Okay. Hey.
Good morning. We have members of the executive staff, Director Robin Riley, as well as Assistant CAO Carolyn Sturgis here to provide an update.
Pause you for a moment, Mike. We're going to do the rec programming first. Yes. So if you're here for the rec programming segment, please, and you're part of the panel, or please turn your cameras on. And if you're not, I don't think we're handing out money at the pool, so I don't think Mike Covey is needed until that segment. All right. Thank you, Vivian.
Sure. There's a request to understand, all the things that are happening related to opening pools and facilities, as well as summer camps for youth. I know that the department has been working very hard on these issues, and Ms. Riley is here to provide a briefing to PHED committee members on how things are going.
Terrific. Thank you. My family has been using our community pool, not a county rec pool, but a community pool. And, I'm glad the pools are open today. Thank you, Director Riley, for pushing through and getting the pools so that they could open today. I know it's a complicated matter, but, it also seems to me that as we are allowing community pools open, we need to have our public open. And I think more so for camps. That was a big part of my interest in hearing a briefing today was, we've got to be able to provide some kind of outdoor, socialization and development for kids this summer. And, private camps are operating some, obviously the scale is much reduced, but my oldest son was in golf camp this past week through the Montgomery County Golf Academy. It was fantastic. Actually, he had a great experience. It's one of the best camps he's done. I want to know that every kid at least has a chance to participate in some kind of meaningful, camp this summer. And the county is a huge part of that infrastructure. And so, we're going to get a briefing today to hear from the department about what they're working on and what the timing and any questions that we can help provide answers for. I don't know if Director Friedson, you'd like to make any prefatory comment. If not, we'll proceed hearing from Ms. Riley.
I was promoted to director, which
Did I say director?
I appreciate, but no, I share those comments. Appreciate the fact that the pools are opening today safely. I think it's important that everybody have access to similar opportunities in the county, and this allows us to move closer in that direction. And I think the camp question and the way in which particularly young people are able to safely get outside, get exercise, have enriching opportunities. We want to make sure that everybody can do that, and I think that this conversation is a critical aspect of that equity conversation. So appreciate the fact that we're having it. Thanks.
Thank you. Director Riley, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. I have to give all the credit to the staff. They have been working tirelessly over the last couple of months. It's kind of like building the plane while you're flying it. Is kind of how we've talked about it. The pools did open this morning at 6. Our indoor pools open for lap swim, and our outdoor pools will open at noon. It's been a journey, and staff have really worked tirelessly to make sure that we are prepared and ready, and that our staff are doing everything they can to operate the pool safely for themselves, but also for our residents. So our outdoor pools will run in sessions. So you have to be a pass holder, and that means you can purchase a Punch 12 pass either at a pool or you can buy it online, and allows you 12 visits. That way we know who you are, we can register you and track you. And it's easier scanning in just access in and out makes it much more simpler. We are doing sessions on a much more reduced level. So our lap swim at an indoor pool, you would actually go in and register for a time block of 2 hours. You can come anytime during that 2 hours, and the lane is yours. It's one person in a lane. You can do that online through FlexReg, which is our software product. As of late yesterday afternoon, I looked between the indoor and outdoor pools. Today alone, we have almost 580 participants, both in the indoor pools and the outdoor pools. So our lap swim was very popular. A lot of our work complement who get in early and swim their laps and go on to work. We're super excited, as well as our seniors, to be able to get back in. Everything is around social distancing. There'll be one entrance door, one exit door. We ask everybody to be prepared to get right into the water, limit the use of the locker rooms as much as possible. Our outdoor pools will open again, also in sessions, but with limited capacity. So Germantown Pool, for example, as an example, would have only about 100 people per visit. So for a 12 to 2 o'clock time block, only 100 would be allowed in. We would have lap swim as well as rec swim. The wading pools, the kiddie pools are all closed, but the features such as slides and diving boards are available. At the end of the 2 o'clock session, everybody exits out through the main gates. We try not to have them go back through the locker room. Staff have about an hour between sessions then to clean down and wipe all high touch surfaces. So handrails for diving boards, handrails for slides, bathroom cleaning, counters. Every career staff or every staff person, lifeguard, is assigned their own PPE. So they have their own water safety tube, as well as a mask and all the cleaning supplies that they need. Social distancing will be required on the deck or at any pool, as well as PPE. So you have to have a mask on unless you're in the water. Guards will not have to wear a mask. And they've also been trained on some new Red Cross safety techniques that are around COVID. So things like reverse saves, reach and grabs, those kinds of things, as opposed to the traditional ways. So we got back in the pool on Wednesday with a lot of in-service training, and then again on Sunday. And we think we're super ready and excited to have our residents back in the pool. Our swim team is back in early morning for lap swim, and those families are very excited. We're hearing a lot from families about getting back in the water, so we're excited about that. Questions about pools before I move on?
I see that we're joined by Councilmember Albornoz. Welcome, glad you're here. Former Director of Recreation. Gabe and I sent a letter, I guess it's not in the packet, but maybe a week ago, that asked for a timeline on opening and pressed for opening. At the time, it wasn't clear when pools would reopen, if I'm understanding the chronology correctly, and certainly we're hearing a lot of concerns about camps and the need for support to get the camps open. So, Director, it's the second time I've called a Councilmember Director. Councilmember Albornoz, if you'd like to make a prefatory comment, or turn the floor to you if you have questions and so on. We're just focusing on pools so far. We haven't yet gotten to camps. Oh, I'm not hearing you. You seem to be muted. Try again. Yeah, you're gonna log in and log in. Yeah, maybe you have a headset or something plugged in or something like that. Okay. All right. Questions on pools. So the outdoor. So all pools are open, indoor and outdoor. Is that right?
Yes, yeah. Indoor and outdoor are both open. Sorry.
Okay. And so the statistic you said over 500 users this morning. That's fantastic. That's a lot of people. Yep. Do you want to talk? Those are presumably all adults, since it's so early in the morning.
Well, the 500 number is for the day. It's for the day. So that includes our swim from 12 to 8 at all of our 7 outdoor pools too. So they open at noon and they run sessions from 12 to 2, 3 to 5, and then 6 to 8 this evening.
Councilmember Albornoz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Apologies for the technical difficulties. So, Director Riley, thank you so much. I know it's been an extraordinary 3 months, and even in the best of times, it's hard to facilitate and prepare for a summer swim season. Could you talk a little bit about the staffing? I know that's challenging even in good times to bring folks on board, and then in August, the students have to go back to school. I guess I know you share my concern about pool safety, and you've made it such a remarkable priority. And I think Montgomery Recreation has led the nation in many ways in terms of our pool safety protocols. But I am concerned that in this environment where lifeguards have to keep track of already so much within their purview, now you add the operational challenges that come with managing the operation of a pool in a pandemic. Could you talk a little bit about what the safety protocols are within our pools, and also if you could provide tips for families who are preparing to come to pools? You know, normally under normal circumstances, we would make sure they have sunscreen, make sure that they know the pool policy guidelines before they go in, to make sure that, you know, we avoid drownings or other catastrophic situations. But if you could talk a little bit about staffing, and then also more specifically give some practical advice for families as they're preparing to come to pools today and through the end of the summer.
Sure. I think the reduced numbers in the sessions really help relieve a lot of stress on our staff. So with only 100, that's still a lot, but 100 people in a pool during a session really helps them significantly in managing that. What we've done with staff is it's been a challenge. It has. We sort of got you were having some difficulty with technology, but we talked about the fact that it was flying the plane as you were building it, and we certainly were, and staff were preparing all along, trying to figure it out. You know, we were sort of gearing up for laps, and then we got the opportunity to open with the rec swim, which was fantastic. I mean, it's great for our customers and our families who need to be able to engage in some meaningful activity outside, but it meant a little bit of a pivot to get them ready for that. And so we've been connecting with our seasonal staff all along, making sure we had significant numbers to make sure we opened safely. And if we couldn't, we were prepared to scale back either geographically pools opening or limited scope of hours. But once we knew we were approved and we could open safely, we got on the horn and started calling our seasonal staff, got them in on Wednesday. They were excited to be back. If you were at the training on Wednesday and again yesterday, you know, everybody's on the deck, social distancing, with their mask on, and so they were very prepared and excited. I think it's become our new normal. And so I think it's been a relatively quick transition and easy. And so I think, you know, we've done a lot of work. We've stacked all our deck furniture. We're encouraging families to bring their own furniture or blankets. If you need furniture, we will have it, but we'll know when it comes off the rack that we do have to clean that one again. We are creating circles for social distancing around the guard chairs so that everybody knows to stay away. We are encouraging through communication to all our pass holders to be prepared when you come to the pool. Be in your swimsuit, have your mask, have it on, you know, stand it. We have the markings on the pool, out in front of the pool as you gain access. We want you to come in one door and exit out the exit gates. Really limit no use of lockers, limit the use of the locker rooms. And then we're going to have, we have the opportunity to use what was Teamworks, but is now called COVID for, that we're using around COVID relief to be social ambassadors, to create just friendly reminders to our customers about social distancing within their family. We have lots of signage, and we're doing lots and lots of communication as reminders to our family members to stay in your family network, both while you're on the deck as well as in the pool. And we will have extra PPE in case people forget or need it. That will be available to them. Lots of cleaning supplies, lots of hand sanitizer. So we think we've done a remarkable, staff have done a remarkable job getting ready for a safe summer for both customers as well as our staff.
That sounds great. And then are the amenities open as well? The slides, the leash, you know, the all the other wonderful amenities that come with our aquatics facilities, are they open too?
Yeah, right now they are not. The only things that are open are slides are available as well as the diving boards. Even the diving boards, there's some social distancing markings on the deck in front of the diving board so people remember they have to wait in line. Our tiny top pool, our wading pools, the splash features, the lazy river are currently closed under this phase, so they're not available. So it's important that there'll be very limited opportunities for young toddlers other than just to get wet with a family member. And so we hope those will, as we continue to keep our data and keep our numbers in a good place, that those will open up at the end of the summer.
And then, as you said, I'll close with that for now. As you aptly said, we're flying the plane and building it at the same time. This is obviously completely uncharted waters, no pun intended. But I think this is extraordinary. If we do move to a phase 3, if things continue to align, at least locally, obviously we're all very concerned about the numbers we're seeing in other states that rush to open. So I think it's smart for us to put a pause button on the phase 2 reopening. But if we do get to a point towards the end of the summer, what would that look like? How would that phasing in occur? And are there benchmarks that we're looking for in working with Dr. Stoddard and others based on best practices that we're keeping in mind in terms of numbers of what might make sense?
Yeah, I can't speak to a lot of that. I'm sure that's Travis's area, not mine. I think for us, a lot will depend on, much like you talked about, our staffing model as we get into the late summer. Whether we can maintain the operations that we have now with the capacities that we have now. We're doing a lot of that work now, doing inventory about when are kids going back to school? Are they going to be available through August? And then working well ahead of the time to be able to pull back and scale back operating hours if we need to, or only run the outdoor pools as opposed to the indoor pools and redirect those staff at certain times. So we're working on that model right now to be better prepared in August and September.
Thank you. And then obviously revenue projections are going to have to be massively shifted. And I know how important those revenue marks are to hit for OMB especially. So I hope they're giving you guys maximum flexibility because this is an extraordinarily difficult time.
Yes, I hope so too.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Let's proceed to the question of the camps.
Yeah. Okay. Summer opportunities for camps. We have probably for the last 3 months been very, while it's been a challenging time, I think one of the bright lights that has occurred out of COVID, if there is one, is the fact that recreation professionals in Montgomery County as well as in the state have been collaborating on a much higher level than we've ever done in the past. We've always done conferences, meetings and trainings together, but here we're working collectively every week to communicate because we understand, especially in the county, that a lot of our residents don't understand the difference between City of Gaithersburg program or a Montgomery County program. So we've worked collectively to share best practices and ideas and make sure that we could work collectively to make sure all of our residents, young residents around the county, had some level of summer opportunity. It has been challenging, not knowing whether we would have access to public schools where we do a lot of our summer programming. That happened late in the game for us to understand we no longer had access, although we kind of envisioned that might not happen. So redirecting and getting us back into when we could safely open up our own rec centers. We have some rec centers, as Councilmember Albernaz will tell you, that have limited outdoor space because of just where they are. Wisconsin Place, East County. We have a couple sites that are currently shelters. Those shelters envision running at least probably through the fall, maybe into the winter. So Long Branch and Caulfield, we know those were off the table in terms of that. So we have been working with our staff to create a lot of scenarios, a contingency plan, whether it would be full operations, scale back operations, virtual camps, no camps, that kind of thing. For us, our youth development team and our countywide program team that run our summer camps have, as well as our facility staff, have worked collectively to provide a full, robust programming package based on all the contingencies. We've been working with our labor group to make sure that they were safe with all of our, are comfortable with all our safe practices. And we've agreed now that we're going to do summer camp starting on July 20th. It'll be a much more scaled down approach. It may be something like 3 to 5 hours, primarily outdoor camps, using opportunities to use the outside as much as we can safely. We recognize that there are code red days, there are thunderstorms. They will be a very limited capacity. So a site that might normally have 150 kids at Good Hope Rec Center, which has fantastic outdoor space, as an example, would only be able to, if they move inside to do activities because of bad weather, too hot, those kinds of things, they may only be able to have a capacity of 25 kids because of just the space alone and the ratios of the staffing. So the social hall there would have to be divided in two, and we maybe only have to have 6 or 8 kids on each side of the social hall. We may use the game room for an activity. So we have all those plans in place. We're starting to pull back staff this weekend next to do our programming. We've bundled all of our art supplies together. Now every camper that comes will have their own art supply kit that will be just theirs, no more shared things. So we will hope to roll out on the 20th. We're going to start registration this week. We're reaching out to our Rec Assist customers who were registered previously because we knew those are our most vulnerable families, to make sure that they have an opportunity and feel safe about registering first before we take anybody else in an open registration process. We'll work with our linkages families, and we're working with public school systems for referrals on young people that they feel need a safe place to be during the summer. So we hope to roll those out on July 20th.
Great. Well, we have a couple of questions that our staff has prepared for us to help walk through, but I'll open the floor to my colleagues to start. Councilmember Juwan.
Thank you, Mr. Reamer. Good morning, Robin. How are you? Good to see you.
Good to see you.
You mentioned something at the beginning I just want you to expand upon in this section. So you mentioned that places like Long Branch and Coalfield are serving other purposes, obviously helping our vulnerable residents. Those are also areas where you kid like me growing up in Long Branch, where you want to have access to the community center and programming. What are you thinking about for those communities where that's not as much of an option? How are you going to address that, and where would they be? Will there be transportation involved? How are you thinking about making sure that we meet the need for children and families that would like to access the camp service, albeit limited, starting later this month?
Yeah, great question. I was actually on a conference call on Thursday evening. I think it was Thursday. All the days are running together. Thursday evening with a bunch of residents from the Caulfield Community Advisory Committee. And we talked a lot about that. And they're helping me to identify spaces that we might be able to use, whether it be in a faith-based organization that might have a large gathering room that we could use during the day just as a backup for emergencies, as well as some of the local apartment or condominiums around that community that we could use that space as well. So we're working collaboratively on that. The same at Long Branch. Morris Buster, for those of you who know Morris, he's the mayor of Long Branch, I call him. He's working with a lot of the apartment associations to see if we can find space. But we have talked about also running buses. Running buses is a little challenging too, because you can only take 11 on a bus. But taking the opportunity to have a couple of buses parked at Caulfield Community Center, pick up those young people and transport them to a site. Like, we're actually going to use some of our senior centers as spaces. So we might transport them to Schweinhaut Senior Center, and that might become a camp. So we're looking at those opportunities to make sure that everybody has equal access.
So they'll still be able to sign up and get notified, and we'll figure it out. If kid signs up, we'll figure it out.
Yes,
okay. Good. Thank you very much. And thanks for all you're doing.
Oh, you're welcome. My pleasure.
All right. Thank you for everything you're doing. I can't imagine how complicated it is to try to figure all this out as the actual circumstances are changing in real time. I mean, I think that's the tough part about it, right? Is from week to week, you have no idea exactly what circumstance will be in the following week, 2 weeks from now. So how many kids do you think we will be able to serve? What's our capacity?
Yeah.
And we haven't, since you're announcing that camps will be operating in several weeks, when does signups and all that kind of thing open?
Yeah, great questions. Normally in a normal summer, we would serve 8,000. This summer, we hope to serve about 750. It's remarkably different.
Yeah.
We hope to get the email out to our Rec Assist folks today, this afternoon, and they'll actually receive a barcode, and that will permit them to register for those sites based on that barcode. If we don't hear back from them, probably by the end of the week, we'll give them a call and register them by phone, just so that we make sure that they're included and that they didn't miss something. And then if they're not interested and they want to, pass on the slot to someone else, we'll keep moving through the list to make sure we fill all the slots and have opportunities for everyone.
Thank you. Councilmember Albornoz.
Thank you so much. I guess summer camps play such an important role in the social and emotional learning of students. And so it is tragic that within recreation and so many other summer opportunities that kids don't have access to. And recreation has been such an incredible partner of MCPS for a long time, but in particular the last 10 years. And so I think recreation is well positioned to address many of the social emotional issues that students are going to be facing going into the upcoming year. And I know that MCPS is very concerned about this. So to Director Riley's point, that is potentially one of the silver linings here, is thinking more creatively about how we address those social and emotional needs and how we can support students. I guess in addition to the direct camp services, are we going to offer drop-in times, socially distancing, and once we reach a certain number, cap things off? But for students that can't participate in the formal camp activity, but need some place to go to recreate, to exercise, to address those mind, body, and soul issues, is that going to be feasible this summer within some of our gyms, or understandably, are we not going to be able to do that?
Well, that's a big question. A couple things. We are working closely with public schools. I think for us that we know that fall will look different, and our out-of-school times, who we have been so remarkable about providing out-of-school time opportunities, we know that might look different. So an out-of-school time opportunity actually might be a Tuesday or Wednesday during the day. So we're thinking creatively about how ways that we can collaborate with public schools and fill that need in terms of that gap. If a family member, whether we can provide space where a teacher can come in and use our buildings as a classroom to create the physical distancing in the space, or whether it's other opportunities. We're still working through all of that and just starting that process now that we have summer camps launched. We have not opened our rec centers to the public at this point, and so that's part of a fine balance that we haven't gotten to that next phase to be able to do that. So we're not there yet, Gabe, but we are doing a lot of things. Our staff have been working a lot around when they're teleworking and researching on collective ways to do small group outside activities, whether it be in the evening, like family yoga, or early morning Tai Chi for a senior. And so they're thinking about how to launch those things and get going now that they can return back to work in this next phase. For us, it's phase B. And so we've now got our employees coming back to work. So we'll be able to launch much of those ideas. I know there is a lot of discussion, and we have a really great core group of employees who want to do a lot about youth voice around racial equity, and keep that energy growing and that dialogue open and continuing. So I think they have a lot of passion and thoughts around doing a lot of work in that area. Our seniors are doing the same thing. Beyond delivering senior meals 2-3 times a week and doing the food recovery work, they want to give back and make those social connections with seniors and find things for them to do as well.
Thank you. And I think the summer nutrition program and the partnership where we created those summer hubs, I think is a great model as well. And I totally agree with you. The outdoor component makes a lot of sense and provides a little bit more flexibility. So there's precedent there to expand on models like that. which I think is going to be very helpful. But appreciate all your work, Director Riley, and look forward to supporting all of it moving forward.
All right, can we talk about some of the challenges that you've had to get to this point? I'm glad the pool's open today, and I'm glad the camps are opening in 2.5 weeks. Honestly, I wish camps were also opening today. We're not going to be a lot of time left after the camps open before school begins, so the window will be very short. Can you talk about some of the challenges that you're having just to work through the process and establish the protocols and help us understand why private camps may be operating, but the county's public camps are not yet operating?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot has been a lot of challenges. It was always changing. Our numbers were changing. We were moving at a different pace than the state, which is understandable. It's been remarkable that we're being patient and not rushing back too quickly, because obviously the states of Florida and Arizona and others are facing challenges that we aren't facing right now. So I think that's been a challenge, as well as while teleworking is awesome, it creates a lot of challenges. It creates a lot of silos. So communication has been sort of a barrier for us, where people were working in different silos and not crossing through to talk to each other. So we had a lot of communication that broke down.
Team management is not easy when the team can't be in the room together.
Exactly. And I take a lot of responsibility of not probably doing a better job of really facilitating that in a better way. And so staff felt like they were not safe. They felt like they weren't part of the plan and not really connecting in terms of safety. So we worked through a lot of those communications over the last few days and reached an agreement with them and others to really try to launch something. So, now we're ready, boots on the ground and ready to get started.
So the County Employees Union was expressing concerns about safety protocols and didn't feel that what you had outlined was sufficient. Is that basically it, or?
Yeah, I mean, I think they were protecting the employees, which I'm respectful of, and wanted the safety of them to be a priority, which obviously it is for me as well. These kids are my family in some ways, They asked for a couple things, and we were able to work through some of those protocols in terms of providing some extra health techs to provide guidance around some of the entry procedures for a young camper who might come in, taking temperatures, doing the daily check-in logs. We're providing testing for all of our employees, our seasonal employees, both at aquatics and camps, can be tested every.
Tell us more about that.
Okay, so the county has launched a testing model. So we're working with Health and Human Services, and we'll have set hours at our indoor pools where a seasonal staff can go online. It's voluntary. They don't have to. It's not required for them to do it. But if they're interested in getting COVID testing, they can go online, make an appointment. They can drop into an indoor pool during a set block of time. They bring their barcode in, and they have a test.
Testing will be provided at the pool where the employees work.
Well, it'll be in one of the conference rooms, in the back conference room.
Yeah, but it'll be on site.
On site, correct.
It'll be certain hours that are scheduled.
Correct. Yep. We hope to launch. We've already registered with the lab. We've got our site coordinators in place. We're just waiting on the next layers to get that launched and going. But that was one of our commitments to do, as well as for summer camps. So
I think that's great, right? First of all, I think it's fantastic that we are providing that kind of testing for our employees. I think we should be providing it for the public, and I think that we should be providing guidance to private employers that this is the kind of operation they also need to be doing. I am a little worried about not having it be mandatory. I'm not sure about that, actually. I'm hearing that when offered, frontline employees are not taking up the offer to get tested. I heard that MCFRS, for example, the first round was about 50% participation. And, I think the reality is people just don't necessarily know if they're, anyway, I think that it may need to be mandatory. And I know that would be a complicated affair, but I mean, when you're on the front line interacting with lots of people, your own personal judgment about to what extent you might have been exposed isn't necessarily something that we can rely upon. So I think we're going to have to keep a close eye on that. But I am glad to hear that there is a system that's operating, that will be operating for regularly available testing. I think we're going to need to hear more about that. Interesting. So, I think I interrupted you though. You were telling me about some of the procedures that you had in place.
Yeah, and so now that we have a lot of those safety protocols in place and work through it with staff and they understand it in a deeper way than they did originally, I think we've come to agreement that we can launch these camps. And so we're excited about doing something by July 20th.
And you'll be reaching out, you said, through what kind of lists that you described it. You have some way to target your outreach to the most, essentially the kids that need the help, they need something the most.
We have a program called Rec Assist, and Rec Assist is our scholarship program. It's for families that are on food stamps, health insurance care, living in shelter care, so they're most vulnerable community. So we'll be reaching out to those customers first that service that community. So everybody that's from Good Hope in that service community that was on that is a Rec Assist customer will have the first opportunity to walk in and register for those sites.
Vivian, do you think there are questions we haven't gotten to on your list? Anything you wanted to ask?
I think we've covered generally the questions on the list.
Okay. Well, I think that'll conclude. I guess I'll summarize, from my perspective. Thank you, Robin. I know how hard your team is working. I can't imagine the logistical complications of what you're trying to do, to have just hundreds of different points of variation and specific, situations that you have to try to smooth out and understand, and while the sands are shifting underneath you. So, I salute you, and I think we're all really recognizing the challenge that you have. I'm glad the pools have opened today. I wish the camps were also opening today. I know you're negotiating with McGeo, and they have put on the table, various kinds of requirements that we're meeting. And it's been a slow process, unfortunately. So camps are not going to be opening at the same time as private camps are opening. So, I was able to enroll my son in an in-person camp last week. It was a great experience, and it was a relief for the family to finally have a chance for him safely to be outdoors with his peers. For how long has it been since he's been able to interact with his peers in person? Months. And we got to move faster and do everything we can so that even if it's recognizing we're going to serve 10% as many children as we served, and I understand the MCPS challenge where you can't use their facility. That closes a lot of doors. And that's a whole another complication. But, we need to make these opportunities available as best we can. This is a key part of our equity agenda, to provide opportunities for youth. And so we're behind you, Robin, and we're grateful for you, and we send you our support, and let us know how we can help in these coming days. If there's anything we can help smooth out.
I appreciate that. Our staff have been remarkable. They've been, I think I've always used the word nimble, and they are. I mean, they hit the ground running and make things happen. So we're excited to be able to get going again, and I appreciate all their work, and I appreciate your support as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Robin. Caroline, Ms. Sturgis, you may already have had to depart. I know you had another meeting. If not, if you'd like to share any reflection before we close up this item. Okay. I think she may have had to, I know she had a conflict at 9:45. All right. Thank you very much.
Hello?
Oh, there you are. Okay.
I'm sorry, I was unmuting myself. No, I am still here. I listened to the conversation. Thank you so much for your support. Thank you, Director Riley, for such a comprehensive overview of the plans that we're doing. I also noted some of the concerns of the council members, and we'll definitely share that with the executive branch. So thank you so much for the time.
Great. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Vivian. Appreciate it. Thank you. We'll move on to our next item. All right. Welcome, Jean, Tina, Mike. All right. I think I'm going to, so council staff has prepared a packet. This is to review the special appropriation that is before the county council now. I'm going to turn it to my colleague, Mr. Friedson, in a moment. You know, he can share some reflections and we'll walk through the program. You know, I'm pleased that we're doing this second round of, you know, larger round of grants for our local small businesses. Good morning, Jerome. You know, the first one was definitely a challenge. You know, I guess I want to say for anyone watching from the business community, I think it has been a disappointment to all of us how the March, you know, the necessity to show losses in March, how that played out. And I think it's a disappointment to everybody, you know, that we weren't able to help businesses that we know were devastated in March, but for various reasons, whether it was their invoicing or whatever, they just couldn't show it yet. And so I'm glad we have come up with a new program. There was we had an issue with too many cooks in the kitchen, I think, last time, and so I think this time we got it smoothed out. Councilmember Friedson took the lead with Council President Sidney Katz, working with the executive branch, and they've devised a program that is before us now. So we'll walk through the elements. I'll turn it to Mr. Friedson first. Anything he wants to say, and then we'll have staff walk through the pack.
Yeah, I'll just quickly say thank you for that. Thanks to PHED colleagues and to the council president, to the executive branch for working together on this. I think that the first iteration was about losses. The second, you know, with the PHED program, the second iteration was about teleworking, that transition to a new circumstance of working from home businesses that have never had to do that, have never thought to do that, were never prepared to do that. And this is the latest iteration, which is the new normal that we're going to be in for quite some time, which is safe social distancing while operating businesses, trying to figure out that balance of how we help businesses put in place the safety measures that we are requiring at the county and the state level. That's really what this is designed to do, with grants up to $5,000 to reimburse for those expenses that we are requiring in order to keep the workers safe, in order to keep the customers safe, in order to make sure that we are keeping the curve as flattened as we can to move through this in a way that gets us back to as close to what our previous normal was, but in a new capacity and a new normal. So there's a number of items that Jean has prepared here of questions that we need to work through, both in terms of the resolution itself that we need to tweak, and some in terms of the implementation, just for expectation setting, so that we can move forward in the best possible way. But I'm excited about the opportunity to continue the leadership that this council has shown to support our local businesses who have been hit particularly hard by the necessary but drastic measures that we're taking to keep everybody safe.
Thank you. I'll actually ask if Tina and Jerome, if you'd like to say anything at the outset, that's certainly welcome. Otherwise, we'll turn to council staff.
Hey, good morning, Councilman Reaver, and thank you, Councilman Friedson. I think Gene has the questions. I think if we pretty much go through them, we'll answer all of those and then try to see what other questions are there and try to answer those as well. And that might be the best use of time.
Thank you. All right, Gene.
I'd like to say one thing if I could.
Please.
Yeah. Councilmember Friedson, really appreciate the outreach you did on this and working with everybody. Obviously, we're aware of how difficult, the previous conversation is related. This is hard to figure out how to reopen and what it's going to cost and what to do and what the standards are. I think we have taken the right steps here in the county to indicative of our numbers. I was looking at a map of the U.S. and, in Maryland and, is one of the states that's not lit up as far as the ones that's going in the wrong direction with cases. You worry about that because the pressure is coming from the outside, but that obviously has had devastating impacts on our businesses. And so I think this is another example of the council stepping up, and appreciate the leadership of my colleagues and the collaborative nature of the executive branch as well to get this money out quickly to help people reopen with guidance. So looking forward to walking through the packet, but I just wanted to acknowledge that. Thank you.
Can I just add one piece on what Councilmember Joanna just said? Just think for a moment about the previous conversation, as Councilmember Joanna mentioned. 8,000 was the customer base that the rec department was accustomed to working with, down to 750. Now that's a nonprofit, government-provided endeavor that is not, solely based on making enough money to keep people employed. And we're making the necessary adjustments, but that has a financial impact on government, and then extrapolate that to the private sector that needs to provide wages for workers to sustain their families' livelihoods. And I think that's a window, as Councilmember Joanna noted, into the challenges that these businesses are facing that employ our friends and neighbors and that create the revenue that we need to provide the programs to support those in our community who are most vulnerable. So I think it's a nice juxtaposition. It's a sobering juxtaposition that really demonstrates the business model has just dramatically shifted. Some businesses are impacted more than others, but all are impacted in some form or fashion. And this is the next iteration of how we're stepping up to do what we can to help, recognizing that we'll never be able to do enough to keep up in total. But just because we can't do everything doesn't mean we can't do something. And this is more than something. It's very significant.
Thank you. And I'll just note that the 3R program, Reopen, Reimagine, Relaunch, is also, I think, up and running, which is kind of slotted in the middle of these larger programs. Seems to have some similar objectives, but is a little more targeted. And this one, I think, is very wide. So, Gene.
Thank you, Mr. Reamer. Good morning, everybody. And as already noted, I'm joined by our executive colleagues, Mr. Fletcher, Ms. Benjamin, and Mr. Covio, who them and their teams will be doing the yeoman's work on implementing this program. And we'll have extensive discussions this morning about how this program will be implemented. As noted, the resolution provides some guidelines for how the Reopen Montgomery program will work. I'll walk through a few of those real quick, and then can launch into the questions. As noted, given all of the things going on in the holiday week, we just didn't have enough time to put all of the pieces together before today's work session, and so that's why some of those questions are there. I believe a lot of the work has already been done. Quickly walking through the resolution, the Reopen Montgomery will be a $14 million program currently, as the council has introduced. Noted that the sources of funding for this are both federal funds and then unused public health emergency grant funding. Even though we don't know the total amount that will be coming from the public health emergency grant funding, the total program will be $14 million. Whatever is left over from that program will be used, and then the remainder will come from the federal grant or the CARES funding. In the resolution, businesses that are eligible have to have a physical location or all their locations in the county, or at least 50% of their business or employ 50% of their employees in the county. This has been consistent with all of the programs the council has introduced during this time. They must also have 100 or fewer full-time equivalent employees, again, very consistent with the previous programs the council has introduced. They must not have received any funding from other state or county programs related to reopening expenditures. Council staff's not aware of any other programs that currently exist, but this is obviously a backstop to ensure that the funding goes as wide as possible and does not allow businesses to receive multiple grants for the same expenditures. And then finally, the resolution says that the businesses must have incurred reopening reimbursable expenditures between March 16th, 2020 and 30 days following the date when the county starts phase 3 reopening. We're not sure when phase 3 reopening will begin, so that's kind of an open-ended date. And obviously once that date is announced and starts, 30 days after that will be when this program closes, so to speak, in terms of what is eligible. And also then obviously in paragraph 9, council has provided some parameters for what reimbursable expenditures or reopening reimbursable expenditures are. But this is just considered an illustrative list. It's not extensive, and we can have some conversations in terms of how executive staff will review the applications today in terms of what will be reimbursed. Then the final piece is that businesses are eligible to up to $5,000 for these expenditures. So what the resolution does not define, nor does it necessarily need to define, but we can discuss today is how the application process will work, how finance and executive staff will review these applications, determine what is reimbursable and what is not, and then in terms of how quickly will that money be turned around to businesses that are eligible. And so rather than walking through each of these questions, I could suggest that we just see if there's responses that executive staff have already prepared based on what council staff has provided and based on the work they've been doing. And we can walk through those first so they can update the council or the FED committee, and then we can see if there's any open-ended questions that remain.
Great. Okay. Welcome, Jerome, Tina, and Mike.
Hey, welcome, and thank you again, Councilman. Thank you, Gene. And as I kind of figured, Gene went through about 75% of what I would have said, so I appreciate that, Gene. And a few things that he didn't have because he asked us questions that we didn't provide him to him in advance. So let me see if I can provide some clarity on some of those issues. And they are, program administration. We're still going to be administering this program in a similar fashion to what we did with the PHED program. We will be using staff that was in finance, most of which now are, some of which now have transitioned to our business advancement team on July 1st. You may remember that transition occurring. So we will still be using that same staff to administer this program. We will supplement that staff with contracted staffing. The same way we did with the PHED program. We do anticipate that cost to be in a very similar ballpark. I believe we have over $400,000 of contracted staff for the PHED program, and this one will be similar due to the fact that we will have staff looking at receipts and documents that we will have to reimburse for. The reimbursable pathway we know is the best way to get this done due to the fact that we won't have to claw anything back or have anything to do on the back end with our applicants. We will just be doing it on the front end, which of course has, again, there's pros and cons to either way, but our goal is to make sure that the program is administered in a way that as fast as possible, that we get the information in and get the checks out as fast as possible. I do think that, in my opinion, we need to make sure that we, as Councilman Friedson said, set expectations about how quickly and how that can be done. But we are working on it. For instance, the back end of the application process is being designed right now. We're working on ensuring that not only do we have a sample application as well as the website up, I believe at the end of this week, that will help us prepare in the next couple of weeks to actually begin the application process, receiving them, and then start to reviewing them. The way that we want to review them and then make the awards will be on a rolling lottery system where we do not prioritize first come, first serve. We will actually be selecting a predetermined amount, whether it's 400 or 500 of the first batch, and then selecting those 400 or 500 out of there. They will get the award, and then those who do not receive the award will remain in the pool for the next batch processing, and we want to do that every 2 weeks. The value of doing that in that way, not only does it not allow it to be a first come, first served process, but it also ensures that it goes on a little further while we, as a county, transition into phase 3 opening. There are certain businesses who have not even begun to open, and this way the program will allow them to submit for their opening process as well, and then they would be included in the phase 3, but still receive a portion of this funding as well. So I'm going to stop there. Let me ask Tina to fill in anything that I didn't miss, and Mike Covio is also here to discuss any questions we might have on the administration process of this grant.
So maybe it would be helpful if we just expanded a little bit about the application process and the whole timeline. So we will be working this week on designing the application and the website, and anticipate launching a sample application and full website the week of July 13th, which would be next week. And like we did with some of our additional and other grant programs, having a 2-week window where, we're answering questions and entertaining questions and just getting the word out about the program. The goal is to actually launch the application availability sometime during the week of July 27th. We need some time. Our Department of Technology Services needs time to both design the application and all the front-end intake processes. And as you're probably aware, they're still working on the child care application, the back-end process. So they need to finish that up. It will be a rolling lottery system, which basically means that every 2 weeks, any and all of the applications that came in during that period will have an equal chance of having a number assigned to it. We will select somewhere in the 400 to 500 range, and we'll review those applications. Then anyone not selected for that, let's just go sequentially. Anyone who was not selected for the first lottery will go back into the second lottery, in addition to any businesses who subsequently applied. So, and it'll just keep rolling like that. So it increases an individual's ability or a business's ability to be eligible, and it more importantly gets away from the first come, first serve. Everybody's got to make a mad rush to the computer. We're going to, overload the system the first hour. So we think that'll be helpful. Additionally, this kind of system will provide some funding later on for the businesses that aren't even open today, that might be open 3 weeks from now, or again, at the beginning of phase 3, whatever that may be. So it allows us to stagger out the funding in that sense. So I think that's it, unless folks have questions.
I have one question, then I'll turn to Mr. Friedson. So if you've already expended towards reopening in your business, are you eligible for those expenses as well? Or is it only prospective?
Well, because it's reimbursement. The resolution reads reimbursement.
As long as you have the receipts and so forth, you're
correct.
You for
correct.
It. Right.
Correct.
All right, Mr. Friedson.
Yeah, thank you for that. I appreciate it. I have a few kind of clarifying questions. Appreciate all the work. I've spent quite a lot of time with Ms. Benjamin on this, and Mr. Fletcher as well. First question is, earlier on, Mr. Smith mentioned about eligibility based on other reopening expenses. We've had this conversation. I wanted to ask whether or not it should be in the resolution, and we should clarify two pieces of it. One is the question of there are reopening expenses related to the 3R program. That a business could be eligible for that, and the intention is not to be eligible for the same expenses for both, and as well as the child care grants that the council recently passed, and the arts grants, both of which may have some associated expenses related to reopening. So I just wanted to raise that and determine whether or not executive staff and council staff thought it was appropriate to include explicitly those in the resolution.
I think it would be helpful. So we would not make, if you receive a child care, arts and humanities, or a 3R grant, you would not be eligible for these funds. However, if you receive a public health emergency grant, micro enterprise stabilization, or telework, you still would be eligible for
Those are for different expenses.
Right. I just want to make sure we're.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. I just wanted to clarify that. And if there's a state program that does some other, reimbursement or has done, you would not be prohibited from these funds either.
Would not be.
You would not be prohibited. You would be eligible. You would still be eligible.
Right.
Correct. Okay. So I think we should explicitly say what would make you ineligible, with the premise behind that being that all other funds received by a business would be eligible, understanding that, as we talked about earlier, when you're going from 8,000 customers to 750 customers, $5,000 alone for reopening expenses may not be enough to keep you in business. So you may need to be accessing different funds for different purposes in order to stay afloat. So I think that would be helpful if we could. I propose that to committee members to have that included by staff for tomorrow, and then
Without objection.
thank you. On the lottery question, if we do 400 to 500 a week, and we have 14 million plus or some administrative cost to this in the 400,000 to perhaps $500,000 dollar range, and the lottery happened every 2 weeks, then the time at which it would take to expend the funds would be in the 10 to 12 week range. Is that right?
What do you think about this?
Can you clarify?
Yes, it would be.
It would definitely be on the longer end, yes.
Yeah.
My personal view of that, I mean, obviously that's an administrative question. I just wanted to set expectations. I agree with the idea of the lottery. Have actually pushed for that personally. I think we saw it to successful effect with the teleworking program. Although this is a much larger program, admittedly, but 10 to 12 weeks seems like a long time when we're already have a pretty significant headway to launch the program and get the first disbursement of funds out. And so I wanted to see if there was any thought or ability to increase the number from 400 or 500 to 800, 900, 1,000 to shorten that time frame so that the funds can get out to more businesses more quickly, because that is really the goal of the program.
I mean, we can look at that once we get started, but I think, again, what we were looking at was there are some businesses right now that aren't open. And so preserving some of those funds for later on, and also trying to avoid, Councilman Friedson, I forgot about this. Can I come back in and amend my application because I went out and didn't realize I had to buy this? So giving folks enough time to put together enough expenses to maximize up to 5,000 instead of working through, I bought this, and doing kind of a phase thing. I mean, we were just looking at it more comprehensively. But,
yeah, I appreciate the intention there, but I think that trying to design a program to solve for the few cases and inhibiting the ability to get more funds out more quickly, which is really the overarching goal. I mean, if these are reopening expenses and we talk about starting this July 27th, the week of July 27th, that means that the first lottery wouldn't take place until mid-August. That would mean that funds wouldn't finish being dispersed until late October, early November. I mean, that is a long time away from reopening, and seems to, have some challenges there.
I think if we're not focused on the phase 3 community, then the lottery numbers could be increased as long as it matches the capacity of what staff can review. and I believe we probably could come back with a calculation of that based on what we know from the PHED program. I'm sorry, I was looking at you, Mike, but I'm not sure. I know we don't have it right now at this moment, but we should be able to get back to you and say, if we employ this much staff reviewing at this amount of rate, then that could tell you how many we could review. If phase 3 community is not a concern, and if we'll address that when we get to it, then that's the way you increase the number from 400 to 500 to, as you said, 900 to 1,000.
My personal view is we're never going to get to it. Phase 3 may be started. I mean, we're giving a lot of leeway here in terms of the off-ramp, and I'd rather not set up a system that puts us well into October for reopening that's starting now. And if it comes to it, my view would be the council will cross that bridge when we get there. We have demonstrated a willingness to step up and to work with the executive branch to appropriate funds, and if we need to provide more funds to this program or to have a new program specifically for phase 3. Some of those businesses, mind you, are many of those businesses are unique to this moment that require for their business model large groups of people congregated together. And so we've already begun through the recovery work groups that Mr. Fletcher is leading, and these types of conversations of how we help those businesses. Some of them are arts organizations, and we've dealt with those separately. So, my view would be this is supposed to be, by its design, a broad program that gets funding out as quickly as possible to help as many businesses as possible reopen. And as much as capacity will allow, we should try to move the funding out as quickly as possible through a lottery system that is equitable.
That's a question here. I'm sorry. Phase 3, the businesses that get to open in phase 3 that are not open now is very limited, right? It's movie theaters.
It's limited, but Councilman Ringer, the volume of that group is high. We are going through a work group of those now. Sir?
Do you mean like the number of those businesses when you say the volume of that group? What do you mean?
I think that group is going to need more help financially because they're bigger in the size, whether it's a venue, whether it's a facility. The size of those are bigger. And part of what we've been talking about lately is getting them their own specific sort of grant program that some details would need to be ironed out to see if that would be acceptable. But if Councilman Friedson is correct, and that's not part of our target audience in this particular effort, then we could take some more time and develop a lottery system program that still makes sure it's not first come, first serve, still allows for us to use the capacity of the staffing levels that we're going to have to bring in and make sure that we try to get the money out in a quicker way as soon as possible.
What are those phase 3 businesses? Can you give us a couple, not necessarily the name of the business, but the type?
So the hospitality, recreation, culture, and entertainment work group that is in our economic revitalization area for our recovery structure, they make up a lot of what's in phase 3. And you also have other ones that we know that we have heard from, whether they're tattoo studios, massage parlors, in that range as well. So there's a lot out there. There's a great hunger from people who have not had a chance yet to open yet, who are desperate to get there. And worst case scenario, Councilman, we don't get to phase 3. We have a second wave of the virus, and then they're closed for a year. That's hard to recover from. So
I'm afraid that's, if I had to make a prediction right now, that seems more 51% likely,
Well, I think, to me, I appreciate what everybody is saying. I totally agree with Mr. Fletcher that these largely are unique businesses. Some of the other ones that are not by their nature require large congregations of people, like theaters, like arts groups, like, others. Those I think have to be dealt with on a unique basis. A conference center, a banquet hall. These businesses by their nature need large groups of people in order to function, and a $5,000 reopening grant to put in partitions and PPE and other safety measures is not going to fix what ails these businesses based on the public health directives. And so I think we should put that aside. It doesn't have to be in the resolution. I just wanted to raise it because it was mentioned here that moving from a 10-week, process or longer that doesn't start until August versus a 4 to 6 week, process, three, instead of, 5 to 6 lotteries every 2 weeks, 3 to 4 lotteries, every 2 weeks, I think would be a much better approach based on what capacity we have. I think that should really be driving this, and not how do we hold on to as much money as we can to make sure that some of these phase 3 businesses open. Because even some of the ones that were mentioned, I don't know that we need to go into the details, but tattoo parlors and massage businesses have been talked about in a phase 2.5. And how would that, and a potential before some of these other, large congregating businesses open, those businesses may open, and the public health officer has talked publicly about that possibility that's being identified. And I just think there's, 1,000 hypotheticals that we could think through. None of these solutions in a time of crisis are going to be perfect, but I would hate for us to stretch this out so long that we are preventing as many businesses from being able to receive funds that we're capable from a capacity standpoint of providing them.
Yeah.
I think Councilman Freed's, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead and respond. Yeah.
No, I was going to say, I think part of our thinking too is with reimbursements, we just don't know what we're going to get in terms of the applications. One person or one company might put in and have just 2 big reimbursements, right? And then you might have another company that's going to send you, receipts from CVS for hand sanitizer and cleaning. So, so we just, part of it is the unknown on our part in terms of actually what people are going to submit and how long it's going to take to review an individual application. So we were being a little bit more cautious with the numbers. If we feel like we can go faster, and we can get them done with the staff that we have allocated, then of course we'll go faster. But it was a little bit of, we just don't know what we're experiencing. And then the other thought I just want to share is, even if we don't move into phase 3, there are still some phase 2 businesses that even though they can open right now, they're not opening. They're just not there yet. And so I think, everybody has said, even at a national level, that when things start to open up, it's slow, it's an uptick, but it's not like everybody came out of the gate saying, oh, we're ready, we're going to do it tomorrow.
Fortunately, you're going to give them 3 months based on what we're talking about right now. Even if you go to a tighter time frame, there's a 6-week ramp on your current timeline just to start the initial lottery and disbursement. It's 6 weeks from today at our earliest point, and then you'd be talking about 4 to 6 weeks after that. That's 12 weeks. So, my view would be, if a business is not opening today that's eligible and able to open from a public health directive standpoint, the difference between a $5,000 help for reopening expenses is not going to be the difference between whether they open today or open within the next 3 months. That's just a very unlikely scenario, and that's not really what this program is designed to do. It's designed to provide some help, to provide some support, to reimburse for the expenses that we are requiring on businesses that they otherwise never would have needed to do: partitions, PPE, hand sanitizer, other outdoor furniture in order to spread out the business, et cetera. But it's not designed to help everybody in every circumstance for every reason. And I just think we need to focus on it. And then the last thing, related to what you were saying, this was framed in the way the 400 to 500 was framed as a way to preserve funding for phase 3. I think in the previous grant programs that we've talked about, we had an idea of preserving funding, and I don't think it's easy to do. I think it's a hard one to explain, and I think it should be based solely on capacity. I think the capacity question and issue is a serious one, and one that the executive branch will have to work out through contracting and through existing resources through this. And I'm sensitive to that. We've had a lot of conversations about that. But I think that's what this should be based off of: how quickly and efficiently we can get this funding out to as many businesses as possible, based on what our obvious capacity limitations, not on how do we withhold enough funding to allow for every business in every phase to be eligible in October. I think Councilmember Jawanda wanted to say something. I think I might have cut him off, so I apologize for that.
Okay, I'll pass it to Councilmember Jones, but I want to say I don't know that we're going to have more money for another phase. I mean, I understand why the executive branch packaged it this way. Nobody knows, so this is a tough one. But to proceed now on the assumption that there could be millions of dollars yet available in October, November, I understand better why you had a slower rollout.
But we have done this in every other scenario. We have not done that. We have not said we're going to not provide funding for something because there may be funding for something else, or there may be folks who aren't eligible.
We have yet to budget any money for housing. There's not a single penny in our entire COVID CARES Act allocation for housing. That's missing. Education. There's not anything budgeted for additional MCPS funding. We have to be a little bit mindful that there are many priorities. By adding the $10 million for early education, by adding the $3.5 million for arts businesses, which are businesses, we are stacking up a lot in the business category. So I do understand. I don't know that we're going to provide funding for movie theaters in any time. Nobody knows when that's going to reopen, but I'm sympathetic to the massage parlors and tattoo parlors. Nail salons and hair salons are already allowed to reopen, right? It's just very limited capacity. Isn't that right, Jerome?
Yes.
I just want to be very clear that in every aspect of this, the one thing that has been the greatest frustration, including those who are now talking about, here, colleagues who are talking about delaying the rollout of this, has been the speed at which we could get the funding out as quickly as possible. It would defy every emphasis that we have had at every other point in order to do that. If that was the interest that we wanted to do, I'm
having flashbacks to the conversation about speed, because I think it was speed that resulted in the March income qualification for PHED 1, which then disqualified, most businesses that I know. Am I wrong about that?
You're getting wildly off topic here. That has nothing to do with what we're talking about.
All right. Can I chime in here a little bit, Mr. Chairman?
Please.
So, as I understand it, one of the reasons you'd like to hold back some of the money, in addition to, I think, what Mr. Reamer said about just us not knowing how much money we're going to have to be able to come back, that's a significant concern. I share that concern. Is to maximize the diversity and types of businesses that can apply. Is that part of it? Because and I'm talking to Jerome and Tina, I guess primarily here. There's going to be you're going to have a set of early risers that automatically get into the lottery because they know that they're watching this, and they're ready to apply. And then you're going to have some people that just, are late to it. And I know many of these businesses that were late in PHED round didn't know. I was trying to tell them about it. They're just day to day. Then you have businesses that aren't ready to reopen, which is the category that you said, because either they haven't gotten their stuff together or they're not able to reopen. There's a number of people in that different categories. So could you just explain, is the equity approach part of it as well? Because for me, that seems to be a compelling interest, as well as the fact that we might not have more money to come back, and we've done a lot of different types of businesses. So I just want to hear your feedback on that.
Yeah, so I would say two things. I know Tina has an opinion as well. We do want to protect those businesses who say, hey, I got $5,000 in expenses to reopen, but I don't have $5,000 right now. They may have to go out and get a line of credit or something small in order to purchase those materials in order to get qualified to get into this program. Not ideally. Originally, we wanted just a grant program where we were going to provide grants and it not be reimbursable. Right, and that would help that population out that much more, because you're taking money that's given to you and then you're going out. But that didn't work best for our ability to survive an audit and get legal support. So that's how we ended up on the reimbursement program. So yes, there is an equity component to it. And also, I will say that, the Andrew Klein, the Chief Administrative Officer, has said something to me regarding if this would make sense to meet in the middle of the conversation we're having about money now versus later. He was like, well, why not just spend half of it, $7 million on this program right now? Then you'd have a smaller pool of money that you're working with to get out as soon as possible. And then you'd have another pot of money later for a phase 3. Now, I'll be honest, I'm the one that told him no to that one because I thought there was an existing need of $14 million out there in the community right now. But as everyone is trying to find where that middle ground is, I'm just putting his option on the table that he mentioned to me late last week.
Tina, anything to add on that?
So I think what we were looking at was the line in the resolution that talked about the reimbursement expenses period, which goes 30 days after the launch of phase 3. So that's a longer period, and not that we were trying to tie it to that, but if you're saying you have up until 30 days after phase 3, then it's who knows when that could be. But again, part of it, and I don't want to deny, part of this is based on staffing capabilities and not knowing exactly what the receipts are going to look like and what form they're going to want to come in. But
well, and I'm also sensitive to Mr. Councilmember Friedson's point of wanting to get this out to folks now who need it. I'd like to find a balance because I think there are concerns on both sides of how quickly. We're never going to have enough money. I mean, that's just so. What do we do with the money we have, and how do we make sure it's given out as equitably as possible when people know about it, when they're ready to open? I think that point that you made, Jerome, about not necessarily having the money to go out and purchase is a significant point for if you're businesses that have not had income for a while here, but you're trying to get going. That's important. So having something set aside so those folks can get in. I don't know if 7 and 7's the right way, or if it's 10 and 3 or 10 and 4. But I do think I'd be willing to entertain some sort of option where we could hold some back, give you guys some flexibility to hold some back, so that we could deal with those types of situations.
Well, I'm going to vote pretty adamantly and strongly against any reduction in the appropriation. Everything else is administrative question of the executive branch. I was raising the timing because the way that this was set up and explain the distribution of these funds in an ideal sense, which we've yet to see, actually, given the fact there are so many concurrent programs, there is so much tax on the staff in order to administer all of these different efforts, which I am very sympathetic towards and very appreciative of. But we have never met what our goal has been in terms of launching programs, getting funding out. It always takes longer than what we expect. And we were setting up, in an ideal world, a circumstance where the funding for these reopening grants, which are for opening your business, wouldn't happen until up to mid to late October, which is really not a reopening grant at that point. It's and what is more likely, the very businesses that we're talking about that may lack the funds to be able to upfront pay for them and would want to have more time to be able to build their business back up, or the fact that they needed to get their business open so that their business could stay alive, to pay their rent, to pay their costs, to pay off their debt, whatever they need to do, and the fact that they would have to wait to be reimbursed that expense for 10 or 12 or 16 weeks would be more harmful to them. I think the same thing that we had with the PHED program, which is well-intended ideas that unfortunately hurt the very people they were intending to help. Some of the restrictions we are getting into here. And I will raise the second piece of this. While I understand that there are lots of other things that we could spend money on, lots of other programs that we could do, this is COVID money that is intended for emergency response to the crisis that we're in that expires on December 31st. So the idea that we're going, based on the fact that we just talked about this program that we've been working on for several weeks, that is going to hopefully pass tomorrow with, I would hope, limited dramatic changes as are being discussed now today. It's not going to start for 6 weeks from then, and it's not going to start distributing funding for 10 to 12 weeks from there.
Is that what you said, Tina? That money wouldn't be going.
When do you think December 31st funding is really going to happen? I just don't even understand what we're talking about.
Can you re-express the administrative process that will distribute the funds? You had said
So we would have
500 applications per week in a pool for lottery
correct, and then disbursements will go out from there.
to 500 businesses.
Correct, and then 2 weeks
Wait,
after.
all right, I want to make sure I understand. So anyone can apply, but
Right.
you will only take, and you will put all applications into one lottery pool, and you will make 500 awards.
Let's say, no, bear with me. So we'll pull 400 to 500 applications based on a randomization numerical system. And those applications will then be reviewed. Okay, you might have some folks who aren't eligible, but so we'll go through that. And
What is
then as soon as an application is reviewed and their receipts have been verified, we'll cut a check right away.
Okay.
They'll go
and
through that process.
When will the first round of businesses receive checks?
And what's the earliest based on that?
Probably the earliest would be second to third week in August
Okay.
for the very first ones to go out.
In an ideal world.
In an
perfect
ideal world.
situation.
Right. So we are
And then
making
10 to
sure-
12 weeks following that. So this is what I was saying.
Well,
Second
you
or
could-
third week in August, and then add 2 weeks on each of those, 400 to 500 every week, as you had said, to expend up to $14 million. You would be well into October at the earliest, where these would be dispersed, 10 to 12 weeks. So from passage, which is the 7th, to the disbursement of emergency crisis response funds for reopening, it would be 3 to 4 months potentially after reopening when the business are actually incurring these expenses, and it would be 2 to 3 months at the earliest after passage of the appropriation. And I want colleagues to understand what they are pushing for here.
Thank you.
That's what they're pushing for.
And then the reasoning as far as your administrative capacity, if you had more people assigned, what would be the number of awards you could produce per week?
So that goes back to what I said. Oh, go ahead, Michael.
I'm sorry. If I may, I'm sorry. Let me. These should take less time to review than the PHED grants. But as Ms. Benjamin noted, we don't know what we're going to get yet, and what we've gotten on PHED was all over the map. So
Can I just pause you on that? Because Tina said something, and I noted the words that you used, Tina. You said you expect about 500 applications per, I don't know if you said week or month.
Well, that's what we're anticipating. And again, we need to look at staffing.
Sorry, I just interpreted you to mean that based on your experience, that's how many businesses you think will apply.
Yeah.
Versus,
No. So you're just saying
Thousands of
each
businesses are
round.
going to apply.
Yeah. In each round, each lottery, right? That's what you were saying? In each lottery, you do 400 to 500.
Correct.
that's right. Yeah.
okay, sorry, go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, sorry. So Tina said quite a while ago in this conversation, we'll do them quicker as if we can do them quicker. We should be able to do them quicker, clearly, than the PHED grants because the review side of it should be a fraction of the PHED reviews. And the PHED reviews were, of course, complicated by the fact that for a very large number of businesses, we had to ask for more information. They didn't provide the correct information or all of it. So we went back and forth with them, often multiple times. That should be less of an issue when we're talking about them providing receipts. So they're going to provide receipts in many ways. Hopefully the receipts actually tell us what they're actually buying. A lot of receipts don't have a lot of information about what the items are. So I think we're just being cautious now. We're not trying to make it last forever. What we're trying to do is temper your expectations, given the fact that we've just lived through this with almost 7,000 PHED applications and all the different oddball things that happen with them. Similar things are going to probably happen here. So we don't want you to have expectations that are beyond what we're going to be able to do. And we'll be talking internally over the next several days about how to staff this to get 500 to 1,000 payments out the door every week or two, or more than that if we can. And the fact of the matter is the payment side of all this is a side that only county employees can actually participate in for control reasons, honestly. We can have contractors work on the front side of all this and do reviews of applications and whatnot. We can review the reviews if it's necessary, as we had to do for PHED, because as I said earlier, we've had to go back to the businesses over and over again to make sure that we've gotten everything so they can get what they are entitled to. So we just don't want you to have outsized expectations when we don't really know what we're going to see at this point. And we're concerned that a lot of times people send stuff thinking that this is what we asked for, and it'll be a receipt that just says, $7,000 at the bottom and supplies or something like that. And so we'll have to go back to them again and again, and it will take 2 and 3 and 4 times as much time as it would if everybody just sent us hopefully all electronically, of course. If they just sent us exactly what was needed, which would be some form of a receipt that details exactly what the receipt is payment for.
Could I just mention a couple other things? I mean, we are looking at ways. We've learned from the PHED program, clearly. We've all learned from an administrative perspective as well. And we are looking at ways to condense our process. So a couple of things that we will be instituting. We won't do a separate grant letter. The application will actually become your grant letter as well. So we'll bypass that. And it looks like we will just be doing paper checks instead of the automatic deposit. And that will, of course, alleviate another step on the back end. So we continue to look at ways to avoid the bottlenecks that we found during PHED, and we will continue to do that as we develop this program.
Okay, so why will it take until a month to begin taking applications? I mean, this does seem extremely simple.
So DTS, again, is still working on creating the back-end process for the child care. Even though the application process opened up last week, now they have to go in and do the back-end administrative technology piece of it. So once they finish that, they'll be able to start on this, okay? But that probably won't be until next week sometime. And then it'll take them, 5 to 10 business days to put together the application and all the front-end system. And then we'd be able to go live with the actual online application process. But in the meantime, we will put up the website with the sample application, start doing the outreach, press releases, information sharing about the program, which of course is critical.
Okay. So to be clear, there's nothing in the resolution about this administrative component. You briefed us on how you're planning to do it. Andrew has urged you to move faster to handle more applications per week. I share that view, but I don't want to set an expectation right now that there will be another $5 or $10 million for another program. There could be, but there may not be. We just don't know. Well, I'm reacting a little bit to that assertion that we'll have to do more for round 3 of opening. We just don't know.
You can split it, Councilman.
I don't. I share the comment that we're appropriating this money and this is what it's for. It's, you know, we're not walking back the appropriation. We're going to spend through it. I don't think, you know, it took months to administer the PHED program. That was a very complex program. It was frankly poorly designed, you know, to try to offset revenue losses. Turned out to be a very, very difficult model that didn't work well at all. And businesses are incredibly frustrated by the whole experience. Simple grants for reopening expenses should be very simple. You know, you submit your expense. Obviously, I don't, you know, I'm sure there's some element of it that's hard to anticipate, but, so this one seems like administratively it should be fairly straightforward. So,
yeah, go ahead. I just had a question based on the language. When you're, I don't want to cut you off though, huh?
I don't know. I guess go ahead.
To your point, though, you know, we appropriate the money. The administration has the flexibility to do what they're proposing to do. I guess this might be a question for Gene. You know, as far as this kind of wait and see, or you know, moving in the pace that they're going to move. I guess is my question.
To your question, Mr. Wanda, the resolution does not dictate the pace at which the $14 million can be dispersed to businesses. Certainly, the council or the PHED committee currently could recommend a pacing in the resolution to help create a better understanding of how that should occur based on the council's understanding. But right now, $14 million will be appropriated as of tomorrow, should the council approve it, and then the executive side will begin implementing it at the pace and at the implementation rate that they've suggested. I think one data point I want to just point out, given the conversation, is it will be 19 weeks from March 16th to July 27th, if that's when the application will be open. The 19 weeks is almost a third of the year, so knowing that businesses could apply for any reimbursable expenses between March 16th and July 27th, I mean, council staff doesn't know for sure, but my expectation is that more than $14 million will be requested by July 27th. And I think that's just important to note because regardless of how long the program runs, there will be a rolling lottery. And I totally understand the executive side needing to not limit, my apologies, but to narrow the bandwidth in order to do the proper implementation of this program and oversight. But I just thought that would be important to note that we have a 19-week lag before this program starts.
And not only that, it's a 7-week lag from the time that reopening began for phase 1. I mean, just to get the application open, it's going to be a 9 to 10 week from reopening for many businesses when they actually were incurring the costs, to the fact that they would even be eligible. And the most likely scenario is not going to be that we're going to be holding out for thousands and thousands of businesses waiting to be able to have the reimbursements to be eligible to get up to 5,000 as it's been described. We're going to have thousands and thousands and thousands of businesses that are shut out of the first lottery and then again out of the second lottery and are waiting with bated breath to see whether or not they're going to be one of the lucky few that get their names called to be able to get the funding that will help them survive. So it's not part of the resolution. I didn't realize that we were going to be getting into an existential conversation of how long we can wait to get funding out and what other funding we should be doing. Had I known that, I probably wouldn't have raised it and would have discussed it offline. I mean, these are executive questions of administration. I was just trying to raise the point that I think the timing of this and the administration of this was discussed for two different purposes, and I really think it should be focused on one purpose in order for this program to function, which is capacity. And that is a very real question. That has been a large focus of this conversation, not of withholding funding until October in order to allow more people to function. We're going to be proving this on July 7th, and if we can't spend the 20 days making sure till July 27th, which is when the administration has said that they're going to launch the application, if we can't use that time to advertise to businesses that they're eligible for this fund, that is a failure on county government, and we need to do better than that. Withholding funds from businesses because we are not communicating efficiently enough is not an appropriate response in my personal view.
Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Chairman. I just think they have the flexibility they need. We're going to have to continue to discuss, and get updates, as I know you all will do, about how it goes. There's just a lot of businesses in a lot of different categories that some who need it are already have needed it for a while, and some that aren't quite there yet. I agree with Mr. Fletcher. If we could have had a grant program, that would have been better. But reimbursement is where we're at. So, okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Could I ask on this, Mr. Chair, if whether a lottery included in the language of the resolution, without obviously timing of expenditures is not an appropriate thing to have in the resolution, or not that it's not appropriate, but it's not legally binding. But whether a lottery system, that language is something that we should include in the resolution. I know that's been discussed. I just wanted to raise that question.
You're asking whether it is appropriate to have it, or
whether it would be beneficial or necessary by the executive branch, or from our standpoint, to include language in the resolution about the disbursement of funds through a lottery system. And the reason for that is so in order to avoid the need to promulgate emergency regulations. Many of the other programs did not necessarily have promulgated emergency regulations, which we don't have the ability to, amend anyway. And so I'm just wondering whether or not that would be beneficial here.
Sure, if you're recommending that, sounds fine.
Well, I'm asking for guidance. Sorry, I'm asking for guidance from
the executive
staff and from thoughts from the executive branch.
Again, having that language would be helpful in the resolution. I think if we have that, we may not have the need to have executive regulations. There's enough in the resolution for the eligibility and use of expenses. And if we add that in terms of how applications will be reviewed, I think that's going to be enough, if that's okay.
Okay, so I would move to include language on a lottery system in the resolution to be presented to full council tomorrow.
Without objection? All right.
Yeah, just the one last thing that I had, the administrative question in terms of spending some of this appropriation on outsourced funding. My understanding, and I just wanted to clarify for the public record, that because that is part of appropriating these funds, we don't need explicit language in that, as we haven't had explicit language in other areas for the $400,000 or whatever the expectation of funding for those costs would be. Is that accurate?
Correct.
I wanted to confirm that number. I wanted to ask about it. So it's $400,000 for the whole program? This is an administrative expense to contract with?
That's just it's an estimate right now?
Yeah, that should be a pretty good estimate too.
That's to administer all 14 million?
Yes.
Okay.
And that would be just the contractor cost, yes.
And the bandwidth, how many employees, what is your expenditure for your per round of lottery? And again, to this question of, can you increase the awards? If the motivation of picking 500 per lottery is to save money for October, you don't need to do that. If the motivation is to run an efficient program that is affordable to administer, that's different. What is, how much does it cost to administer? How many employees are administering the lotteries at 500 awards?
Right, so we'll have to figure that out over the next week because we have until the 27th, remember, until the the applications start coming in, and that's 3 weeks from now. But so before then, we will know that. We'll have a good idea of that. And we're going to have a mix of county employees and contractors working on it. Getting contractors is not a short process. It'll take a week or 10 days to get contractors in place and ready to go. So, but we'll have better numbers on that over the next couple of weeks. And we'll have to figure out exactly how many county staff we want to make available for this, since county staff has their regular jobs that they need to work on still. And there's still a little bit of work on PHED 1 going on.
Okay. All right. Well, I think we would all welcome getting more awards out than what you've talked about here. And I don't think you should save them for round 3. I think you should administer them as quickly as you can. And, you know, it sounds like you could do more than 500. So I think you should do that. And it's not a resolution, so we'll have to monitor this. And to Gene's point, businesses are eligible for any expense that they've occurred since March. All they got to do is turn in their receipts for a list of expenses that pretty much any business has had. So I tend to agree that you're going to be inundated with a lot of applications very quickly. And then it's just a question of getting them out the door. And I think that I think we want a well-run program. We don't want to have, more criticism of, the pace and everything like that. So I want to, give you some leeway here to tell us what is a well-run program going to look like, and, the pace that you can get it out. And, I think a month or 2 to get all the money out the door is not unreasonable. I think 4 or 5 months is, we don't need to wait that long. Jerome.
Hey, thank you. I just want to say, and I just want to make sure everybody's on the same page. This program is not going to be perfect. There's not a perfect program out there. There's going to be people that say that this program didn't work for reasons that either are out of our control or that we didn't think of in advance. And to say that, the PHED program wasn't very successful, I think there's 2,000 plus businesses that would disagree that were able to be helped through that program that would say it was successful. Now, the other mass volume that didn't get help, of course, they're going to not like the program, but the program wasn't designed or had the capability to help every single person. So I just remember, we do the best we can with as much as we can, but nothing is going to be perfect in anything that we do.
Agreed. So thank you for saying that. And I think it's really important that we also remember, what the purposes of these funds are going to be, that this program is designed to be simple, to be able to get funding out the door, to be flexible for businesses who desperately need it. It doesn't solve every problem. It solves some problem for a lot of businesses that desperately need help and support, and the goal is to help them as quickly and as fairly as we possibly can. And if we've learned anything about all the programs that we've done, it's about being clear, it's about being simple, and it's about being, flexible within reason to be able to meet the needs that we want, but focused, flexible and focused in solving the issues that we have. I understand that the sausage making process is not always the prettiest. I'm not sure if I was a business watching this conversation that I'd be super enthusiastic about where things are headed. So hopefully we can all get on the same page and move forward, which I trust that we can. And, I do agree. I think the goal with the PHED program is not to repeat some of the same challenges that we had. We are, as we talked about in the previous conversation, we are flying the plane as we're building it. And I think all of us need to, recognize that. Certainly I had my concerns and disagreements with certain decisions and ways that were happening. And we've tried to work really hard to address some of those in this. And I'm just concerned that we don't get caught down the same rabbit hole we did before, where we start on a specific idea and then we try to change it as we go to, totally well-intended goals in mind, but in doing so, create more challenges for more people. So I'm confident that that is not going to happen, that we got it out of our system during this conversation, that we're going to get everything on the same page. Like I said, we've been working extremely closely with the executive branch on this. I know the executive branch is working extremely hard and looking to get this up and running. Certainly, I'd like it to go faster. I just wanted to raise the goal. We should go as quickly as the capacity will allow us to go, and as long as we're on the same page with that, and then keep the communication going as we move through this process to make sure that we're all on the same page. I think this is a positive thing that's going to help a lot of businesses, a lot of employees. It's going to keep a lot of people safe, just as importantly, because that's part of what this funding is for, is to help businesses keep their workers and keep their customers safe. It's not just about the businesses opening and providing for the people who own the businesses. It's actually really to support the people who are working at the businesses and the residents who are frequenting the businesses as customers. Let's move forward. Let's make it happen. Let's do it as quickly and efficiently and collaboratively as possible.
Thank you. This was not this is making the sausage right here, no doubt, but I think we got out on the table an assertion or perhaps an assumption that we're trying to administer this slowly so that businesses in several months that might reopen would be able to apply. And that is not what we want to do. We want to proceed to get the grants awarded as quickly as we can without wasting money with administrative expenses that would be better spent on the businesses themselves. So, not just being profligate and trying to hire up a massive army to get money out the door. Have a good program that is a good experience for the businesses. Get it out the door as quickly as you can. It sounds like we can do a lot more than 500 a week. We'll monitor that. And, I feel confident about this one. This is straightforward. This is put in your receipts, get a grant, and we'll get through them as quickly as we can. And I would imagine we'll have our funds out the door before the state once again. They put out a big fund. They've just announced, but there's more money coming. So, all right.
Could I mention one thing? We've beaten the horse sufficiently here. I just want to say that getting the information out and the graphics and the means by which you're going to get it out, publicize it. I'd like to have some. We can do this offline, but I think that is something that I'd like to see improved and be a little more innovative in the delivery mechanisms about how that not necessarily cost a lot of money, but the use of potentially some social media, factoring in. I'd like to we can take it offline, but I have some ideas about how we can promote it in a way, to Gene's point of you have a long window of when expenses could have been incurred, to get it out to people that aren't watching this, so that I agree, and we should get it out quickly, but let's work really hard over the next 2 weeks to get it out far and wide and in a lot of different ways that we might not have done with FEG.
Your input is always welcome.
Thank you.
Could we move as amended as the committee recommendation, unless there's any other issues that Mr. Smith or executive staff wanted us to raise?
So I guess real quick, the two amendments that I have are amending the one paragraph related to the reimbursable expenses. I'm sorry, what you've already received financial assistance for will now specifically state the child care, the arts grants, and the 3R program. Everything else will it will not be open-ended. It will have those three specific programs, and obviously any businesses that receive money from those specific programs will not be eligible for this program. That's the first amendment. And then the second one I have is specifically stating this will be an open lottery system. So what council staff will do, will amend that. I can share it with the FED committee members just to make sure we're on the same page, but I will create an addendum for tomorrow's packet so that information is clearly stated for the council to see.
Great, and I'll just add one point that was raised in your questions in the beginning that I don't know that we got to, which is reimbursable expenses. The goal, and I'll confirm with executive staff who are on, because we've talked about this extensively, but the language as introduced keeps it broad. It has a list that isn't intended and is explicitly non-exhaustive. Does includes but not limited to, and is a broad umbrella of related to public health requirements by the state or the county. So, it would be a cost incurred to reopen and to fulfill the public health requirements of social distancing, of professional cleaning, et cetera. And that seems to be the easiest and best way to do it, to have a list of examples included but not limited to, and focus the broad umbrella of any cost directly associated with the public health requirements by the state and the county or the county. And I just wanted to make sure that we address that as introduced, and make sure that executive staff concurs with that.
The only issue there would be that since it's broad, which the council should make it broad, is that if executive staff determine a reimbursement is not eligible, like they will just need to have justification for why that's not eligible versus other. So council staff believes a list somewhere, maybe more exhaustive, that executive staff can provide with the application will probably aid businesses in knowing what will work and what won't.
The executive, I think the conversation that we have had previously with the executive staff was the possibility of including an aspect of an application that allows for an explanation of something that isn't included, of how this directly relates to the requirements by the state or the county, but I didn't know if they wanted to add anything to that or concur with that.
From my standpoint, I think that keeping it broad, one, is good, and what you just mentioned, the ability for us to hear from them as to why they needed to buy something that we may not easily understand on first glance, to me, is important. Because what you don't want our reviewers to start being labeled as are people who are deemed to be subject matter experts in whatever it is that they're reviewing as far as the receipt goes. If it's not on the list and they spent it to be reimbursed for, and they can explain why they spent it and why it was necessary, I think that should carry a lot of weight. Otherwise, you start getting into the point of people making decisions based on their own interpretation, and we should truly want to avoid that. Because again, simple and quick. Simple and quick.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and I think it's a recognition that not all businesses are created equally, that they're unique, and there are a lot of niche businesses that we have in Montgomery County, particularly a lot of the small businesses. The smallest businesses are niche type businesses. They may have social distancing tools and requirements that we don't even know about, haven't thought of, and so I think this is the right approach. Appreciate the confirmation from the executive branch. I just wanted to raise that because it was included in the staff package, and so I want to make sure that folks who are watching that we have addressed it.
Right, and it's a good example of how we're going to be compelled to work iteratively with some of the applicants. And we'll go back and forth, and they'll explain things to us, and we'll either accept them or not accept them.
Well, the goal is to have an application where they explain it clearly, and it's either accepted or rejected. But I appreciate the point. I mean, some of the conversation that we have had, and I think this is to the previous point about learning from the PHED program, is trying to get out ahead of as many of those issues as possible to create the opportunity for them to explain in the application something that is not obvious, to eliminate a step to try to get the funding out quicker. Hopefully that will take some staff burden off of the administrative team, and it will allow the funding to get out as quickly as possible. But it does note that nothing is as simple as it seems. So I take that to heart and appreciate your work, your team's work, and all the efforts that you and your team have put into all of the programs that you are responsible for in this crisis.
Although nothing is as simple as it seems, this one I'm very hopeful is going to be very simple, because you'll list the expenditures for which a business qualifies. You'll provide an easy way for them to load up their documents, and then you'll just work through, and there's no, hopefully, there are a few, gray areas where obviously there will be hiccups. I don't want to, say otherwise, but
It was designed that way, it's intended that way, and I hope and expect that it will be executed that way. So we
Just as smooth as this session, it'll run. Dave.
yeah, exactly.
all works out.
Well, I think I have a standing motion to move the current resolution as amended in the several opportunities without objections. I just want to put that forward for colleagues.
Take that without objection. All right, we have a committee recommendation. Thank you, Gene. Thank you, Jerome, Tina, Mike. All right, take care. Good luck. We'll see you at full council tomorrow for a briefing to the full council so that everyone can also have a chance to fully understand what we're doing, hopefully without the need for much discussion.
They'll just watch this session from
Yeah.
this morning, and all of their questions will be answered very promptly and clearly.
Hopefully tomorrow can be a presentation and less a discussion.
Thank you, guys.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate it, everybody.
We're adjourned.